Hi everyone! In this video, I'm going to show you how to make the Ski Lodge bracelet featuring your original Jewel Loom and using beads from the Creative Soul Kit for January 2025. And so I'm going to be warping this loom. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to reintroduce, just for beginners, how to warp the Jewel Loom. But if you already know how to warp your Jewel Loom, I'm going to drop some timestamps in the comments so you can just jump right to where we start stitching. But if you're new to the Jewel Loom, you're going to want to put in the little bar that it comes with. So this is the tension bar. You just want to go ahead and insert that into the hole on one side. And then you're going to insert this end into the hole on the other side. You just go ahead and press that down. And that's going to make a little smile with your Jewel Loom. And now we're going to get our thread. So I'm using some 1G thread. The Creative Soul Kit came with a small spool of that, and I'm using the color Opaque Cream from that kit. And working from your spool, what you're going to want to do is tie a double knot onto the knob. And it doesn't matter which knob you choose. You can just pick one, left or right. And actually, I kind of prefer working from, I'm right-handed, so I start on the left so I can warp this way, but it really doesn't matter, just whatever is comfortable to you. But go ahead and just tie a double knot onto the knob there. There we go. And bring that through. So there's my double knot. And now I'm going to pull this thread back behind and wrap it around. And I just brought my tail with it. You don't have to do that, but it's just kind of neat to bring it back here so it's not in our way. And then just bring it up through any of these combs here on the front side of the loom. So like maybe right about there. This is not a super wide piece, so you could even go further towards the center if you want. Let's maybe go like right there. We're going to be putting 13 warps onto the Jewel Loom because our pattern has a total of 12 beads in each of the rows. So we're going to scroll down here and just find the notch that roughly corresponds with the position you chose at the top. It doesn't have to be exact, it will still work. And then bring your thread around the back knob. And because we are working with an 11-0 seed bead, we're going to go through the very next coil. All right. Ooh. Just going to free my finger from there to the next coil here. And then I'm going to wrap around the knob at the back. Find the next one. And find the next one. So keep going like this, making a circle around your back knob, finding the next coil. So just like that. And doing that same thing on the bottom, just bringing it through the very next one, wrapping around, and so on. So carry on like this, again, until you have a total of 13 of these strands. So a total of 13 looks about like that. And if you want to count them up, just count along with your fingernail. I usually will use my fingernail to just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That will give me my 12 beads per row, because you need to have a strand on either side of your beads when you are looming. So go ahead and go around the back knob one more time. And this time you're going to want to tie another double knot onto one of the knobs here. You just choose whichever side you like. I've gone around a few times to create some tension, just so that it doesn't loosen up on me while I'm doing the next step, which is to tie another knot. So at this point you're going to want to cut it free from the spool of thread that you were working from and leave enough that you can do a double knot with it. And just bring that around up through the loop. And I'm going to just try to grab that little end there and pull tightly. And each time you do this, it'll get a little easier. But you definitely want to make a few of these knots. Make sure it's a nice tight knot. And there we go. I'm going to do that one more time. All right, so there's my knot. Kind of a double plus an extra one for security. And now what we need to do is remove the bar from here. And so just very gently pop the bar up. And that will actually make the tension on your loom super nice. It makes it really tight, and it makes for a very beautiful bracelet design as you get going. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to pull another length of thread, and I'm just going to go for a comfortable working length. So for me, that's about a wingspan or 60 inches. On a design like this, you will probably end up adding thread at least one time, and that's okay. It's really easy to do, and I will show you how that's done. But we're going to go ahead and thread a size 10 beading needle. I'm using a hard beading needle. To get started with your loom pattern, you're going to want to lay out your colors in order as they appear in the legend on your pattern. So color A is the white Celion color. It's like a pearlized white, little crystal-y kind of color. The next color you have is a lighter blue. I'm just going to put a few out. I'll probably have to add. The next color is a transparent steel blue. It's a nice little combination there. A Picasso brown. Check this out. So pretty. Last but not least, I have a metallic gold. That one's going to be A, B, C, D, and this is E. That's probably a little more than I needed there. All right. So I've got this ready. I've got my needle threaded with about a wingspan of thread. And now I'm going to go ahead and just turn my bead mat so you can see me working in this direction. And actually, I'm going to work with my beads on the right-hand side of my loom. So let me go this way. If you're a beginner and you're just getting started and you're right-handed, you may have an easier time if your beads are on the right-hand side of your loom. And so that's how I usually like to have mine. So I'm going to bring my needle under the warp threads, and I'm going to pick up the first row of the pattern, leaving about a 10-inch tail that I can weave in after all of the looming is done and it's been removed. I'll show that. But for now, I just try to leave about 10 inches or so on this side. And let's string 12 of the color A beads, which makes up a row 1. There's 12 color A. We'll slide that down. And when you get to where you're almost going to be, slide it down your thread. And when you get to where you're at your, the 10-inch tail mark, just for this first row, you only have to do this for the first one. Bring your needle back through the beads. And this is just to hold them steady while we maneuver them underneath the warp threads. So bring your needle under the warp threads and press up from underneath the needle. So the beads each settle in between each of the threads, just like that. And then remove the needle. And if you would like to do the method I'm going to show, which shows pulling in the warp threads to save you some weaving in, consider using the eye side of your needle to go back through the beads for this step. You want to pass through the beads above the threads here. So I'm going through the beads and making sure to stay above the warps by kind of pressing up against the inside of the bead. That's one way to kind of ensure that you stay above each of those warp threads. And you may need to adjust the tail just if you have a bead pop out, like you saw how mine did that just a tiny bit. And then use a business card, bead scooper, or any kind of flat surface to just kind of press them along. The design that I'm creating for you is going to fit with lots of extra space on the real estate we have top to bottom here. So just adjust it to where I kind of go for above the little hole here for when I start my bracelets, because it's a little hard to get under here. But here it starts to get easier and easier. So starting from here on is a great way to start your design, and you'll have plenty of room. So I'm going to put the next row on. And the next row is also 12 color A. I started it this way for simplicity and also because the closure we have for this design, you don't see the first row, and I thought that the ease of just starting this way would be helpful. So the pattern really picks up after this. And again, I'm passing my needle through the beads above the warp threads. And I'm going to pull that through. And if needed, you can tighten it up and slide it. After you get more than about 3, 4, 5 rows on, sliding it won't be possible anymore, but you'll still be able to align. Just kind of tap those together. And the fact that they're moving means we didn't puncture any threads, which is also a win for our technique for how we're going to finish. So again, I'm going to bring that thread under my warps. And now I'm going to pick up row 3. Row 3 is a little more involved. So just follow your chart and just pick up the beads that are listed. There's our row 3. And again, I'm going to pass back through the beads. I'm working with the eye side of my needle. And I just press up on the beads and press down on the threads a little bit with my thumb here, getting through all those beads. And not really needing the adjustment as much, but just going to go ahead and just for fun. So that in a nutshell is how to do the looming portion of the design. It's the most, the most fun. Also, the most time goes into this part of the process. But you just want to go ahead and string each bead from each row and bring it on and keep going. When I run out of thread, which I probably will do about at least a quarter of the way, maybe I'll get a little further than a quarter of the way up the bracelet, I'll probably run out of thread. And then I'm going to turn the camera back on and show you adding thread. All right, so I'm at the spot where I need to add some thread, and it's really easy to add thread. You just want to leave the old working thread that you have from where you left off on your row where you were running short. Just leave it in place. Don't do anything to it. Just leave it there and get a new strand. And again, I'm going to go for another wingspan, so 60, 65 inches or so. And I'm going to just string on my needle. Fold that down to give me some extra room. And I'm going to repeat the step that we did at the beginning. Pull these tails out of the way. Bring my needle under the warp threads and string on the next row that I needed to work. All right, and same thing we did before. Going to slide it down until I have about 10 inches or so as a tail, 10, 12 inches. And then just go ahead and bring your needle back through that row that you just strung. Position it under the warp threads and hold it with your finger. You can take your thumbnail and just run it over. Make sure those settle in between each of the beads. And then go ahead and bring your needle back through the beads, making sure to stay over those warp threads. Again, the best way to do that is just press up on the wall of the bead as you go through it, the top wall. And then you can always do a slide test to make sure that it still moves when you are complete with that task. And there we go. So thread has been added successfully, and what I'll have is I have a new working strand that's going to carry on to finish my design here. And then I have these two tails. The tail from the thread I just added and the one from my ended working thread, and then here's my first tail, right? Each of these tails here is going to need to be woven in at the end, but for now, I'm just going to push those down out of the way and carry on with our looming. All right, so once you've finished adding all the rows in your pattern and you're ready to take it off the loom, I'm going to show you the next steps right now. So to begin getting it off of the loom, you're going to need to free it from the parts where we tied the knot. And so I've freed one side, and then on the other side I have this knot to free. This was actually our starting side. And instead of trying to cut next to the knob, you can actually just reach right up there and then just remove that later, maybe with some chain nose pliers. You can usually get that off. And so now I have the two sides free here and over there where I tied the knot. Last thing I need to do is just go ahead and remove this part from the loom. And so the easiest way to do that is to get your chain nose pliers and then grab the cords. See these ones that are laying over the top? And then just gently move them off of the button. And the other side, they'll just fall free from the button. And now you have your design free from the loom. One thing you'll want to do before getting started with the next steps is to smooth out your work. With the tension on the loom being as tight as it is, that makes it really easy to do your stitching. But then the only downside of that is that you are going to have a little bit of bunching when you remove it. See, just a little tiny bit like that. So just smooth it out. And the best way to do that is just bring your fingers to the center and just gently roll the piece in this direction. You'll see it automatically start to smooth out. You can do that flat on the mat or just by picking it up and just rolling your fingers along the work. It should all spin freely, and eventually you'll get a nice flat piece. And if you feel like you went too far with that, you can always just kind of put your fingers on the side and just roll back a little bit from the edges. Pretty easy to do. And there you go. So you're going for something that's nice and flowy. And you can get a look at how cool it's going to be when you're wearing it. So our next steps is we need to pull our warp threads in. I'm going to move my light colored mat so you can get a little bit better view of the work that I'm about to do. I have a pair of chain nose pliers and I have my piece ready to go right here. On each side of your work, you want to go ahead and ignore the working threads. The working threads are the ones we were sewing with. And the warp threads are the ones that were tied to the loom, and they're going to be the ones over here. So what you want to do is start on one side of your piece, and you can work with, you can start with either end actually. So it doesn't matter top or bottom, left or right, but I'm just going to grab the one that I've got that's free. And when you pull here, while holding down on your piece to keep it nice and flat, the loop here at the bottom, you want to make sure that it is free from the other loops. This one right here at the bottom will come right up and snuggle against that bead while you're pulling from this end. And so once again, just make sure you're happy with how nice and situated your piece is, and then go ahead and hold it with your hand. And you'll see this is moving here when I'm pulling. A little hard to see, sorry about that. Let me do this way. It's easier to do facing away from you, but I want you guys to be able to see. So I'm just going to try to, there we go. So you see how I got that one to sit right there? That is the goal for this entire duration of the pulling in process. So you'll just need to go for, once you've pulled from the top, you need to pull from the bottom next. Just work with the strand that's next in. Hold everything down. And as you're pulling from the top, you want to just take a quick look. See what's happened up here is that my loop, the one that I'm trying to pull in, has some other of the loops stuck inside of it. Just free that, get it by itself, just like that, see? And then just keep using good grip on that. Let me show you from this side. And you just want to pull that down until that loop sits gently on top of the other bead. And then you come along and do the same thing with the strand on the top side. And so each time you do that, your loop is going to get a lot longer. And so you can see here at the bottom, I've got this really long loop, and I'm pulling it in from here at the top. Just keep pulling. And watch that loop just go right up underneath it. So next I'll be down here. Just keep doing that until you've pulled in all of the warps, top and bottom. All right, so once you've finished pulling in your warp threads, what you'll have left are 2 warps, top and bottom, and one of them will be super, super long. You don't need that length, so feel free to just trim that to a manageable length. And we're going to have to weave in these ones here and all of the ones from when we were adding thread. But don't worry, it's actually really easy to do, and there's not as many of them now that we've done the bulk of the work here. So I'm going to start with my top warp thread and show you how to weave that in. So you want to just go ahead and thread a needle on one of those threads. There we go. And then since we're working with one of the remaining warps, what we're going to do with that warp thread is we're going to jump over a bead, and that's important because it's the thread running the sides. You don't want to go back into a bead or you'll loosen the bead on that side. So jump over the edge bead, go through a few more in that row. Doesn't matter how many, just come out somewhere, just a few more. And then go ahead and just gently let that thread just jump over the top of that bead. You won't see any of this, it's going to be in the finding. And then go ahead and just needle under. I'm going to hold this up close in just a second. But you want to needle under the weft thread. And so just in case no one's seen this before, this is the easiest way to weave in because it moves your thread path around in the work. So you're not having to go through the same rows over and over again, which is really handy. So you just go under some of those weft threads to bring the thread down and travel through. Gets you down a few rows. And I like to do that 3 times and trim. So that was my second. Here's number 3. Oops, it's having a little trouble getting through that bead. All right. And then once you've got that all set, you can trim that strand or burn it. I like to just use a quick little burn to my extra thread. And trimming it is just fine too. Just some scissors or something like that. And so there's one of those woven in. So the other things you have left, you can see here where every time I added thread, for example, here's where I started. This is my starting tail. Here's where I ran out of thread the first time. The old working thread left in place and the new one being brought in. Same thing happened here. So I had 2 thread adds on my journey here, and it basically broke it into 1, 2, and 3 into thirds. So that's about how far 65 inches will get you in each of those cases. And I left pretty generous tails, so I won't have any trouble weaving in. But let me show you really quick how to weave in one of the weft threads, that is the working threads. It's only a slight difference between a warp thread. So with the warp thread, because it's running the outside, we had to jump over a bead and go. In this case, you're going to look at the side, and you'll see that this strand is already exiting from a bead, and you can see that warp thread running along the side of that bead. You want to jump over that warp thread and go through the bead. And then just get however many through you would like to into that row. And what you'll see happening here as we pull that, this strand right here is going to just hug the side of the warp just like all the other strands do as they were, stitched. So it looks really cohesive. And then again, here we're just going to go underneath some weft. And then through a few beads in that row. And so on. You just want to keep doing that. So I'm going to go through under a few more. I'm being careful here just to pick up just the weft threads. I want you to be able to see that really good. You see just those weft thread right there. Pull that through. Head through some beads. I'm going to do that one more time and I will trim it. And then what I'll do is I'll finish weaving in these others. And let's meet back here to put on our finding. All right, so got all those woven in, and now I'm going to go ahead and put on the finding. And this is a super speedy, nice and easy way to finish a design. But these are little sliding tubes, and the easiest way to get started using them is to close one side first. And so you're just starting with some chain nose pliers. They do bend very gently. And just get that starting to close. And then you can use a surface, like a work surface, to close them the rest of the way. So I'm just gently pressing down on this right now, just against my table. And now I've got one side closed. And you can feed the beadwork through the side. And then we just need to close that side. And the best way to do that is the same way we did this other one, is to get it started with your chain nose pliers. Just start it by giving it a gentle bend, and then use your work surface to press down and close it the rest of the way. And it's pretty gentle, but also very strong once it's closed. And you'll have a nice closed finish. It's a very sleek finish for your design, and that you can put any clasp of your choice onto. You can put a lobster claw, a toggle. You can tie leather to one side and bring a button to the other side. You can do so many cute things with these, and they're so sleek and small that they just disappear onto your piece. So they're one of my favorite and most beginner-friendly ways to finish a design like this. So I'm going to go ahead and finish my other side and then show you my finished bracelet. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and attach. I'm going to start with a jump ring on one side. I'm just going to close that one. And then another jump ring. And with this one, I'll go ahead and put my lobster claw on. I like to do 2 jump rings and then a lobster claw so I have maneuverability. So it wiggles a little more when I'm trying to position it to clasp it. There we go. All right. So you see one end is good. And now I'm going to make a chain that is a series of closed jump rings linked together. And there we go. All right, and so there we go. I'm probably just going to stop there with the 3. I can almost get bracelets on myself in one try these days, but all right, there it is. So you could put a little charm on there. We have the beautiful pit beads that came with the set. And of course, I'm going to do an earring with these. I always like to do a little bonus earring, and I have lots of beads left, so you'll see something from me next on that. But I can also take just, a few of those and wire wrap them to make a dangle for my chain. And there's my ski lodge bracelet. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and it would make my day to see your finished design. If you want to share it to the Jewel Loom Facebook group, that would be super cool. And in the meantime, I want to wish you happy beading and enjoy your bracelet.